Welcome back to the deep dive. Um, we are doing something, well, a little different today. Usually when we talk about major geopolitical crises,
Yeah.
especially something as heavy and complex as the situation in Gaza,
Right.
we're usually looking at, stacks of UN reports or
Hmm.
military strategy documents, maybe some historical
They're
treaties.
usually very dry, very political.
Exactly. And honestly, it often leaves you feeling just kind of stuck.
Stuck is definitely the right word. It often feels like an endless loop of the exact same arguments.
Yeah. But today, we're shattering that loop. We're looking at a source that is, well, I don't even really know how to categorize this one.
It's definitely out there.
It's a proposal for peace, but it is not coming from a diplomat or a general. It's coming from a man who calls himself the blind Muslim yogi.
Yeah. It is certainly one of the most unique profiles we've ever analyzed on this show.
For sure.
The source is a video by a creator named Osman. And to give you the full picture here, because context is really everything with this one.
Yeah, you know where he's coming from.
Right. So Osman is a bioenergy healer who claims to have telepathic capabilities. He's been teaching yoga and meditation for 50 years, and he is a devout Muslim.
I have to admit, when I first saw Blind Muslim Yogi and Gaza Solution in the same title, my first instinct was just to scroll past.
I mean, it sounds like total clickbait.
It really does.
Yeah.
But then you start listening to him and you realize this isn't a political treatise at all. It's almost like a medical diagnosis.
That's a great way to frame it, actually. Because of his background in healing and energy work, he doesn't look at the conflict through the standard lens of borders or nation states.
Right.
He looks at it like a disease or an energy blockage in the body. He's basically asking, what is the root cause of the suffering and what is the most radical, immediate way to stop the bleeding?
And his answer to that question is going to make a lot of people uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely.
Before we get into it, I just want to do a quick tone check for you guys listening.
Yeah.
We are neutrally unpacking this specific proposal and the internal logic he uses. We are not taking political sides here, just looking at the source material.
Important disclaimer, we're just the messengers on this one.
Right, because
Yeah.
it challenges the standard narrative so completely that you kind of have to just sit with it for a minute. He's essentially asking, what if the solution isn't to fight for the land? What if the solution is to leave it?
It's the ultimate counterintuitive argument. He is proposing what you could call a strategic retreat.
Yeah,
But, and this is the really crucial part, he's not framing it as surrender.
not at all.
He's framing it as a religiously mandated strategic maneuver to basically save the body of the Palestinian people.
So let's get into the diagnosis first. Before he offers the cure, he tells us why the patient is dying. He uses this very stark analogy. He looks at the history, the two sides, the violence, and he calls it oil and water. Oil and water. It's a really simple metaphor, but he leans on it heavily.
Yeah, they don't mix. Right. You can shake the jar as hard as you want. You can force them together with treaties or wars. But the moment you stop shaking, they separate.
They just repel each other.
Exactly. He argues that expecting these two entities to suddenly coexist peacefully after everything that has happened is just defying the laws of nature.
He actually had this line where he says, we have to call a spade, a spoon a spoon.
I loved that part.
It felt like he was scolding the international community a little bit. Like, stop pretending there's a diplomatic solution around the corner where everyone holds hands.
He is totally scolding us. He's criticizing the cheerleading aspect of modern conflict.
Oh, yeah, the social media stuff.
Right. He mentions how people on social media are taking sides, fueling the enmity, basically siding with the underdog just because they are the underdog.
Right.
He argues that in the 21st century, we need to use common sense, not just emotional allegiance. And his common sense starts with a very brutal assessment of the power dynamic.
This is where he really drops the hammer. He doesn't mince words about the reality on the ground. He literally describes Israel as the strong enemy.
He goes even further than that. He calls Israel a big bully in this context.
Yeah.
He notes they have massive financial backing, military power, and they are, in his exact words, not budging.
Not budging at all.
Now, it's important to note here, Osman isn't endorsing that power. He's not saying it's right or moral. He's just saying it's an undeniable fact.
It's just a pragmatic assessment of force.
Yeah.
He's looking at the board and saying one side is a nuclear power with global backing, and the other side is being squeezed into a smaller and smaller corner.
Right. He describes the territory being decreased, trade routes cut, services blocked. And his conclusion from that diagnosis is what launches this whole premise.
Yeah.
He says because the enemy is too strong to defeat militarily right now, continuing to fight isn't brave, it's illogical, it's basically suicide.
But wait, hold on. I can hear you listeners right now yelling at us. Isn't that the literal definition of defeatism?
It sure sounds like it.
If someone comes into your house and is stronger than you, do you just hand them the keys? Most cultural narratives, especially regarding this specific conflict, are built on the idea of sumud, steadfastness, staying put.
That is exactly the friction point. And this is where Osman completely flips the script. Because look, if this were a secular politician telling Palestinians to leave, it would sound like ethnic cleansing. It would be rejected immediately.
Instantly.
But Osman isn't looking to the UN or international law for his argument. He looks to Islamic history. He brings up the hijra.
Okay, we really need to unpack this deep history. I think a lot of people might know the word hijra, but they don't understand the incredible weight it carries in this specific argument.
The hijra is pivotal. It refers to the migration of the Prophet Muhammad and his early followers from Mecca to Medina in the year 622 CE.
Which is huge.
It is the moment that actually starts the Islamic calendar.
So it's not just a minor footnote in the history books. It's literally the beginning of the timeline.
It's the absolute foundation, and the context is eerily similar to what Osman is describing in Gaza today.
How so?
Well, in Mecca, the Prophet and the early Muslims were a persecuted minority. They were being ostracized, plotted against, physically threatened. The ruling tribe in Mecca, the Quraysh, was vastly more powerful. They wanted to kill the Prophet. So the Muslims were living in this state of constant fear and squeeze.
So they were facing their own oil and water situation. A stronger enemy that wouldn't budge.
Precisely. And Osman's point, and he gets very passionate about this, is that the Prophet didn't say, we must stay in Mecca and die for this holy soil.
Right.
He didn't order his followers to run into the swords of the Quraysh just to prove their bravery. No. He secretly migrated to Medina. He left his home.
And Osman is very emphatic that this wasn't an act of weakness.
That's the key reinterpretation here. He says they didn't leave because they were cowards. They left because they recognized the reality of the power dynamic.
Yeah.
The enemy was simply too strong at that specific time. It was a strategic maneuver to preserve the community.
That is such a fascinating flip. He's using the Prophet's life to create a permission structure for leaving.
A permission structure, yes. That's a great way to put it.
He's saying, if the Prophet Muhammad, the ultimate role model in Islam, could migrate to save his movement and his people, then Palestinians today can do the exact same thing without any shame.
He's trying to destigmatize the concept of being a refugee.
Wow.
Because in the current narrative, becoming a refugee is seen as the ultimate loss. It means you've lost your land forever.
Right.
But Osman frames it as a prophetic solution. If the goal is the survival of the people and the faith, then staying to be annihilated is actually counter to the religious example set by the Prophet.
It shifts the priority completely from the land to the life.
Exactly. And this connects right back to his persona as a healer.
Yeah, the bioenergy stuff.
Right. To a healer, a dead body has absolutely no potential.
Yeah.
But a living body, even if it's somewhere else, has immense potential. He argues that the strategic retreat would have an immediate tangible effect that implies victory in a different sense.
He literally says the killing would stop immediately.
Yes. His logic is pretty straightforward. If you remove the target, the shooting stops.
Yeah.
He points out that the majority of casualties aren't soldiers. They are innocent women and children. He says you're going to save innocent women and children on both sides. He's looking strictly at the preservation of human capital.
But where do they go? I mean, this is the elephant in the room. He's not talking about moving to tent cities in the Sinai Desert, is he?
No, and he's very specific about this part. He lists developed, stable nations.
Okay.
He suggests they should go to Europe, the UK, Australia, New Zealand, the US, and Canada.
Okay, I had to play devil's advocate here for a second. That sounds incredibly naive politically.
It does.
You can't just show up at the border of New Zealand and say, hey, I'm here for the strategic retreat. The immigration barriers are massive. Does he even address that?
He kind of sidesteps the bureaucratic, how to focus on the psychological will. It's really interesting. He frames it almost as if the reluctance of the Palestinians to leave is the primary blockage, not the visas.
Oh, wow.
He seems to really believe that if the Palestinian leadership and people collectively said, we choose life, we want to migrate, we're laying down arms to leave, if they did that, the international community, those reasonably good countries he mentions, would be morally compelled to open the doors in a way they aren't right now.
So he thinks the world would respond differently to an organized request for sanctuary than they do to an active war zone.
That's his bet. And he lists the trade-offs for the listener. He asks you to imagine what these refugees would gain:
Which is a lot.
peace, solace, protection, access to medical care, and world-class education. He paints this picture of Palestinian children growing up in Toronto or Sydney, getting degrees, becoming doctors, living healthy, safe lives.
Versus the current reality of rubble and starvation.
All right. And he challenges that deep emotional attachment to the land with a quote that really, really stuck with me.
Oh, the gold leaves quote.
Yes. It's so colorful, but it cuts so deep. He asks, does it mean only in Palestine the soil is only gold and the plants got golden leaves?
Golden leaves. That is such a powerful image.
It really is. He's basically asking, is this dirt worth your children's lives? Is it literally made of gold?
Yeah.
He's trying to break that almost mystical connection to the physical soil to prioritize the living, breathing humans standing on it. He's questioning the morality of martyrdom for geography.
He actually gets pretty critical of the current resistance strategies on that point, doesn't he? He asks if blowing up buildings and allowing children to die is true Islam.
That's a very heavy critique coming from a devout Muslim speaker.
Yeah, it is.
He's questioning whether the current form of resistance is actually Islamic at all if the direct result is the mass destruction of Muslims.
Right.
He posits that preserving life is the higher religious duty. He seems to be saying you cannot have a nation if everyone is dead.
But this brings us right back to the fear I mentioned earlier. If they leave, isn't that just the end? If they go to Canada and Australia, doesn't Palestine basically cease to exist?
This is where we have to go back to that Hijra analogy, because for Osman, leaving isn't the end of the story.
Okay.
It wasn't the end of the story for the prophet either.
Right. They didn't stay in Medina forever.
No, they didn't. This brings us to the concept of the long game. In the history of the prophet, the migration to Medina was a period of building.
A rebuilding phase.
Exactly. They went there, they built a community, they gained strength, they made alliances, they established a functioning society, and eventually, years later, they returned to Mecca.
But the way they returned is really important, right? It wasn't some massive bloodbath.
Crucially important. Osman points out that when the Muslims returned to Mecca, they were strong enough to take over with, as he puts it, hardly any killing.
Hardly any killing.
That's the distinction. They didn't return to burn it down. They returned from a position of such strength, stability, and moral authority that they could basically just walk in. It was a conquest, yes, but Osman emphasizes the peaceful nature of the final victory compared to the desperate struggle they fled from.
So the core argument is basically leave now, not to give up, but to grow up.
Yeah. He uses a phrase that I think will trigger a lot of debate. He says, retreat to become civilized.
Oof. Retreat to become civilized. That's a very loaded phrase. It kind of implies they aren't civilized right now.
It does sound harsh, but I think given his background as a healer and a teacher, he's using civilized to mean functioning.
Okay.
He's saying you cannot build a civil society with education, healthcare, infrastructure, arts, while you are under constant bombardment and blockade.
You just can't.
You are in basic survival mode. You are in fight or flight. And you can't build a civilization in fight or flight.
So he's saying you have to completely remove yourself from the trauma to build the capacity for a nation.
Exactly. Go to Canada, become doctors, become engineers, become experts in international law, build your wealth, build your telepathic capabilities, if you want to use his specific terminology,
Right.
build your spiritual and mental strength, and then you have power. Real, undeniable power.
It's almost like he's viewing the Palestinian people as a natural resource that is just being wasted right now.
Yes, he views them as human capital that is being ground into dust. He wants to export that capital so it can appreciate in value rather than depreciate in a war zone.
Yeah.
It's a massive shift from a geography-based identity to a capability-based identity.
You know, it really reminds me of the history of the Jewish people, actually. The diaspora.
It's the ultimate irony, isn't
Yeah.
it? The Jewish people maintained their identity and grew their influence through thousands of years of diaspora, living in other nations, becoming educated, becoming wealthy, becoming influential.
Right.
Osman is essentially suggesting a very similar path for the Palestinians, to find strength in dispersion rather than destruction in concentration.
It's a life over land philosophy. But man, it requires such a massive psychological shift. It requires accepting that giving up the land today might be the literal only way to save the people for tomorrow.
And that is a shift that maybe only a blind Muslim yogi could propose.
Seriously.
Think about it. A secular politician can't ask you to give up your land, but a religious figure can ask you to follow the prophet. He creates that theological permission structure to choose safety.
That distinction, the permission structure, is just so key, because without it, leaving just feels like a betrayal of every ancestor who ever fought for that land.
Exactly. Osman is trying to say, your ancestors don't want you to die. Your prophet didn't choose death when he had the option to leave. Why are you...
It's
Yeah.
radical diagnosis.
Yeah.
And honestly, even if you disagree with him, and I'm sure many of you listening are screaming at your speakers right now with objections about the right of return and the justice of the cause,
Oh, I'm sure.
you have to admit, it's a perspective that forces you to really think.
It forces you to check your own assumptions about what resistance actually looks like. We are so used to the movie version of resistance, which is the Alamo.
Yeah, fighting to the last man, going down in a blaze of glory.
But the Alamo was a defeat. Everyone died.
Exactly.
Osman is suggesting that the ultimate resistance is actually survival. It's refusing to let your people be wiped out. It's refusing to give the enemy the satisfaction of your elimination.
Retreat to become civilized. It's really going to stick with me. It's such a controversial stance. But the way he roots it in the Hijra makes it incredibly difficult to just dismiss out of hand, especially for a Muslim audience.
It really brings us to a final thought I'd like you, the listener, to consider. We often equate bravery with standing your ground, with physical combat. We think of the soldier in the trench.
Right.
But Osman's philosophy asks us to flip that definition entirely.
How so?
In a conflict where the power dynamic is so overwhelmingly lopsided, where it is oil and water and you are the water trying to smash a rock, is the decision to stay really an act of bravery? Or is it just inertia?
Wow.
And conversely, is the decision to leave, to pack up your family, to face the unknown in a foreign land, to survive and thrive elsewhere, is that actually the ultimate act of resistance?
Is walking away the strongest move on the board?
It might be, because as Osman seems to imply, you can't build a future if you aren't around to see it. A dead martyr has no future. A living refugee has potential.
That is a heavy, heavy question, and we aren't here to answer it, just to put it on the table for you.
It's a question that only the people involved can truly answer. But Osman has certainly given them a completely new way to ask it.
He certainly has. It's a blend of 21st century pragmatism, call a spade a spade, and 7th century religious precedent. It is definitely not the standard talking point you're going to hear on the nightly news.
Not at all. But sometimes when you're stuck in a loop, you need the outliers, the blind yogis, the mystics, to show you the door you didn't even see.
We'd love to know what you think about this prophetic solution. Is it a betrayal, or is it a rescue mission? It's definitely something to mull over. Thanks for diving deep with us today.
Take care.
See you next time.